Showcased at CES 2011, Motorola Xoom has been one of the most highly anticipated Android honeycomb tablets. It features a brilliant 10.1-inch screen and runs on Android 3.0 honeycomb, powered by a 1 GHz NVIDIA Tegra 2 dual-core processor. Xoom also has a 5-megapixel camera at the back and a front-facing 2-megapixel camera. In terms of connectivity, it has both 3G and Wi-Fi. Micro USB 2.0 HS, corporate sync and Bluetooth 2.1 come standard. Priced at $800 in the West, the real question is, has Motorola done enough to zoom past the iPad?
So you bought this without a contract from Verizon, so I'm assuming that you paid more because of that. Obviously, most of the people are paying $600 or so, and this is the full with 3G upgradable to 4G version. That's what we're looking at.
That's correct.
Okay, so what are the first things that you sort of struggled with when you moved from an iOS tablet, which is the iPad, to this?
I think the most interesting thing is I couldn't figure out how to switch this on. So it takes a while to figure out, and they have put their button in the most amazing place. It's here. So in a little bit of a time, later on you kind of like it, but initially it is not as easy to locate. And once you get to the OS, I think the UI is a little more, this is not for a casual user. This is certainly for a geek, because the way you navigate this, it has multiple home screens, which is great, but on the same screen there is another interface called apps, where you suddenly are accessing the apps, and then there's another thing over here right on the first page where you go and press plus and you are now customizing your screen.
So that's actually fairly standard to Android. Anybody who's been using Android phones would pretty much be at home with this, because Android phones allow you to add widgets to the screen and everything else. So some users like it, some users don't. Obviously, it's a matter of preference.
No, but the philosophy of the tablet, when Apple really introduced it, their idea was that this is a new device. This is not a PC and not a laptop, not a phone. This is somewhere in the middle. True. So the problem is, I think they are trying to make it more closer to a PC experience. And in fact, if you see that they have these notification bar, almost like a PC.
Almost like a PC,
And I think this interface, would remind you more of a PC, while the iPad interface has got nothing to do with the PC. It's very, very simple. And I mean, the best thing is my 3-year-old is completely comfortable on the iPad, but he got completely confused on this because he pressed some random buttons and
landed up in some place which was unexpected.
Unexpected, and didn't know what to do. So I think clearly this is an interface designed for geeks. Yeah, you can learn it, control it, and customize it. But as a new user, I don't know if I want to do that.
Sure. So it's certainly not a mass market OS at this point in time. That's what you're saying. Now, I just flipped through it for some time, and some of the things that I liked the most, one was this app switcher. You instantly get a preview of all your apps, and you can sort of quickly flick through the app that you really want to reach out to. And obviously the one that you seem to have liked the most is the YouTube app?
Yeah, the YouTube app is pretty good. I think the way they show you the videos and the kind of, let me just kind of open this. Yeah. The way the YouTube videos come up in a wall and the navigation is pretty cool. So I think the Google's own integration is very, very good. Whether Google Maps or Google YouTube video or Gmail. So it is clearly, if you are, somebody living in the Google universe, you would love this device because it has really done that. But apart from that, the problem is most apps are not compatible right now. A lot of apps crash. The Android market is not fully optimized for this, and I downloaded certain apps which were running actually on a small screen, like they were made for the phone. And as a user, if I have a decision to make between this and the iPad 2, this is certainly more heavier.
Yeah, this is heavier than the iPad
even
1, actually.
Even iPad 1, this is heavier than the iPad 1.
About 10 grams heavier than the iPad 1 as well. But it actually feels slimmer.
It doesn't. It's quite thick. It's quite thick if you look at it. It's quite obvious.
What about the Android OS in general? Do you think Honeycomb is a significant improvement from any of the past Android builds that you've used?
There is a problem in backward compatibility. So the significant performance, and Angry Bird, for example, works really well, and I think Angry Bird was specially made for this phone. So the apps which were designed ground up to optimize for Honeycomb.
But do you think the added real estate as far as the resolution is concerned and everything else would make it more vibrant, more worth it, because this is actually an HD screen, whereas the iPad 2 is still stuck with the same 1024 by 768 screen.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that resolution matters, but finally it is not the resolution, you know. Angry Birds even was on the iPhone 1 when it launched, and people are not playing it because of the resolution, it is because of the experience of the content itself. So all these are good in terms of gimmicks, but I think the challenge really is that if you are an absolute Google fan, an Android fan, you should get it. But if you are generally wanting to go for a tablet, I would say the iPad 2 is far better. Later on, maybe it will have apps, and maybe people will modify a Honeycomb. This is just the first Honeycomb version out there, and I think people will modify Honeycomb, and we may see some much more much user-friendly interfaces.
Sure. So that's actually exactly the thing about Android. It's developing at a much more rapid pace than iOS. Apps are still not ready. They're still coming up. You're going to see a lot better apps as it goes along. But obviously, the major factor here is that as far as the tablet is concerned, I think there's a split opinion here. I sort of like the hardware. I prefer the widescreen.
At the price, I don't like it. If this was cheaper, if this was 30-40% cheaper than the iPad, I would have said people to go for it. But this is almost the same price. I mean,
so actually, the Wi-Fi version of this tablet is about to launch in the US. And when it finally launches in the US, it's going to launch at $599 for a 32 GB Wi-Fi only version, which is actually $49 cheaper than the iPad.
For $49, I wouldn't want to compromise on the iOS experience. If this was 50% cheaper, 40%, so that is, I mean, Android's big thing is that they're going to make this even more cheaper and more mass market. So at $200, $300, $400, yes, this could have been a great bargain, but at the same price of an iPad, I would go and buy an iPad and pay $49 more.
So there you go, you've heard him. He says not more than $400 is what he is willing to pay for the Motorola Xoom. Well, he's already paid $900 for it. The max I'm willing to pay is about $600, and I would certainly be happy with that because the HD screen, the dual cameras, and these cameras are actually better universally from what everybody's been saying than the cameras in the iPad. So yes, I would be willing to pay $600 for the Wi-Fi version, and I would switch from an iPad to this. He certainly wouldn't. I would, because I'm an Android fan. So yes, that's the thing that I say. Yeah, Radhika, you used it at CES as well. What do you guys think about this?